As President Trump races to sign quick-fire trade deals across the globe, a stunning act of defiance is unfolding on his own doorstep. While other allies have bent to the pressure, Canada is refusing to play along. Now, facing a punishing 35% tariff intended to force a surrender, Ottawa is quietly calling the president's bluff. In a world accustomed to seeing nations bow to American pressure, how did America's most trusted partner become its most steadfast opponent? For nearly a century, the map of Canadian trade had only one primary direction: south. The United States was more than a partner. It was the entire economic ecosystem. An intricate network of pipelines, railways, and supply chains fused the two nations into a single continental market. For Canadian energy, agriculture, and manufacturing, America was the default and often only customer. This created a profound economic dependence, a reality that for decades was seen as the bedrock of Canadian prosperity. But under the America First doctrine, this foundation of trust began to erode. The Trump administration viewed Canada's dependence not as a feature of a partnership, but as a weakness to be exploited. A new playbook emerged: apply overwhelming economic pressure to force allies into quick, favorable deals. This strategy seemed to work with other major partners who rushed to negotiate agreements to avoid the president's wrath. Washington expected Canada to follow suit, to gratefully accept any off-ramp offer. When Ottawa hesitated, seeking a more durable and fair agreement, the White House grew frustrated. The relationship became increasingly confrontational, with the U.S. using the threat of tariffs as a constant weapon. The unwritten rule of mutual respect was replaced by a new reality of raw power politics. The stage was set for a dramatic test of wills, one that would pit America's demand for a swift victory against Canada's quiet determination to forge its own path. On August 1st, 2025, the threat became a reality. After weeks of watching other nations like China race to secure deals, the Trump administration lost its patience with Canada. The White House unleashed its ultimate weapon: a new, punitive 35% tariff imposed on all Canadian goods not strictly compliant with the USMCA. The move was a clear act of punishment, designed to make an example of the one ally who refused to fall in line. The tariff rate itself was a deliberate insult. While other partners like the EU and Japan had successfully negotiated their tariffs down to a manageable 15%, Canada was being singled out for a rate more than double that. The public justifications from the White House were a chaotic mix of grievances, but the underlying message was clear: this was punishment for defiance. The administration, having secured what it saw as victories with other global players, was infuriated by Canada's refusal to be rushed. The strategy was to inflict such severe and immediate economic pain that it would create a full-blown crisis in Ottawa. The White House was convinced that faced with this level of pressure, the Canadian government would have no choice but to abandon its principled stand and accept any deal offered, just to stop the bleeding. It was a strategy built on the core belief that Canada was too dependent, too vulnerable, and ultimately too weak to withstand a direct economic assault from its superpower neighbor. But in Ottawa, there was no panic. There was a plan. Instead of capitulating or launching a full-blown tariff war it could not win, Prime Minister Mark Carney's government executed a bold and multifaceted countermove of quiet defiance. This was Canada's call of the American bluff. The first and most crucial element was a public declaration that would define the entire conflict. In a clear and steady voice, Carney and his top trade officials reiterated their core principle: a bad deal is worse than no deal at all. This simple phrase was a direct rejection of Trump's pressure tactics. It signaled to Washington and to the world that Canada would not trade its long-term economic stability for short-term relief. Secondly, Canada made a stunningly clever tactical move. It leaned into the very trade deal Trump had championed, the USMCA. Carney's government calmly pointed out that because of the agreement's strict rules of origin, roughly 95% of all Canadian exports were already fully compliant and therefore completely immune to the new 35% tariff. The unprecedented tariff, it turned out, applied to only a tiny fraction of Canadian trade. But for that vulnerable 5%, the government unveiled a robust domestic defense plan, rolling out a series of targeted subsidies and financial support programs to help impacted industries and workers weather the storm. This was paired with a long-term vision of internal fortification. The government championed new legislation like the One Canadian Economy Act to finally dismantle the long-standing trade barriers between Canada's own provinces, a move designed to boost internal trade and make the domestic economy more resilient. This political leadership was amplified by a powerful grassroots movement. The Buy Canadian campaign exploded into a national phenomenon, with the slogan, "Canada is not for sale," becoming a potent symbol of defiance against American pressure. It was a silent but powerful rebellion, a whole of society effort to withstand the storm by strengthening from within. This has created a bizarre and tense stalemate. President Trump has fired his biggest economic weapon, but it has failed to produce the desired effect. Instead of triggering a crisis in Canada, it has sparked a wave of national unity and strategic realignment. Canada is absorbing the economic hit while fundamentally re-engineering its economy to be less dependent on the United States. The White House is now faced with an opponent who refuses to play by its rules. Canada has called Trump's bluff, choosing to endure short-term pain in exchange for long-term sovereignty. The administration can keep the tariffs in place, inflicting continued damage on its own consumers and businesses, or it can back down, a move that would be seen as a major political defeat. The two neighbors are now locked in a war of attrition, a battle between America's raw power and Canada's quiet, stubborn resilience. Canada's strategy of quiet resilience is a stand for national sovereignty, but that stand is not without cost. For a bespoke furniture maker in rural Ontario, the 35% tariff is a direct and painful blow. His company is renowned for its craftsmanship, a symbol of Canadian quality. But because he uses the world's best hardware to ensure his products last a lifetime, his furniture doesn't meet the strict USMCA rules of origin. For years, this was a manageable detail. Now, it means his beautiful handcrafted tables and chairs are hit with a devastating tariff. His business, which sends nearly 70% of its creations to architectural firms and designers in the US, is now facing a crisis. He is caught in the crossfire of a political battle he has no part in. His story is representative of the real-world pain felt by the minority of Canadian businesses caught outside the USMCA's protective umbrella. They support their government's tough stance, but they are the ones paying the price. The owner must now decide whether to compromise the quality of his work by using inferior hardware, or to abandon the American market he spent a lifetime building. This is the human cost of the trade war. It's the anxiety of a small business owner fighting for survival, and the fear felt by his employees whose jobs are suddenly at risk. They are the economic casualties on the front lines of Canada's fight for a fair deal. The pain from that Ontario workshop flows directly south. For an interior designer in Manhattan, that Canadian furniture maker isn't just a supplier, he's a crucial artistic partner. Her clients demand the best, and she relies on the unique quality and craftsmanship of his work to deliver it. Now, because of a White House decision, her entire project is in jeopardy. She gets an email from her Canadian partner explaining that the new 35% tariff has made it impossible for him to deliver the custom pieces at the agreed-upon price. She now faces her own professional crisis. She can't simply absorb a 35% cost increase on a six-figure project. She can't find an American-made equivalent on short notice. She is now forced to tell her client that their dream home will be delayed and significantly over budget. This is the boomerang effect of the Trump tariffs. The policy intended to punish a Canadian craftsman is now damaging the reputation and bottom line of an American small business owner. It creates chaos and uncertainty, and it hurts the very high-end consumers the president often courts. It's a perfect illustration that in the deeply integrated North American market, there is no such thing as a targeted strike. Every tariff is a bomb that causes damage on both sides of the border. A trade war that began with a roar of American power has been met with a surprising Canadian calm. Instead of buckling under the pressure of punishing tariffs, Canada has called the president's bluff, choosing a path of quiet resilience and internal fortification. The bold countermove has thrown the White House off balance and left the future of the North American partnership hanging in the balance. In the race to define the future, will North America win together, or will both nations lose by trying to go it alone? Are you American or Canadian? Share your story and your perspective in the comments below.